Hello and welcome to the very first AEW Match Guide, Golden Wombats. I'm your host, Sam Brown. Thank you for joining me tonight. And if you're joining me on the podcast feed, we've got something a little bit different for you this week. You probably read the title. It's my awards for the year of 2021, the AEW Golden Wombats. And look, if you are listening in on the podcast, it is worth checking out on my Twitter, the absolutely glorious piece of artwork that is the Golden Wombat. Now, I am live streaming this on YouTube. This could be a dicey proposition. This is the very first time I've live streamed something myself, and let's just say my computer's a bit of a beat up old rig. This could go sideways very quickly, but I've been YouTubing and Googling about how to do these things all day long. The last 2 days, prepping, planning. Let's see what happens. And I bought a little bit of liquid courage with me. I have two of my favourite beers, Bloke in a Bar and Brick Lane, two great Aussie independent brews. I'm going to rip the scab off this one. Both of them are actually created and supporting podcasts. So Bloke in a Bar is a rugby league podcast. Great lager, really great lager. Get behind that one. It's a rugby league podcast, and they support themselves by selling beers. They don't do ads, they sell beers, and it's going great guns. It's a great beer. Get behind them. Brick Lane, they support my favourite cricket podcast. So really two great independent alcohol manufacturers, beer manufacturers, and I've also got some more liquid courage, some whiskey, some Eagle Rare. So Eagle Rare, which is kind of the upgraded version of Buffalo Trace, which is my favourite bourbon. Getting to know a little bit more about me today, apparently. Yeah, look, I really appreciate anyone who is jumping in the live chat. We're going to have a fun night. It's going to be a chill night. We've got a lot of fun awards and also some serious awards to go through. Of course, as I've been advertising on Twitter, we've got the absolutely glorious, the illustrious Nut Trucker of the Year, the Goober of the Year, the Wet Fart of the Year, and of course, all of these other great things. Look, if you're in the live chat, I would love it if you could just tell me how everything sounds. I've got no way of knowing how well this is going. It could be, as I said, it could go sideways very, very quickly, and it could be going very poorly. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe my wife's trying to watch Netflix in the other room. This background, it's got some real early day YouTube vibes to it. This is my garage. This is where I record everything. There's no fancy backdrops here. You're getting the real authentic deal here. So cheers to everyone. Merry Christmas as well. I hope everyone had a Merry Christmas. I had a really nice time. We spent time with my wife's family on Christmas Day and then with my family on Boxing Day. We always have just found that it's best to split things. You end up running around and not even having a fun time, particularly when you've got a young child like we do. You end up just running around, not having a fun time. And spending more time on the road worrying about where you're going to go next than if we just split it. We do one thing with one family. Christmas is with one family one year and the next family the next year, and sometimes we do it all together. But it just allows you to really chill out and mellow and have a nice time on the day that, is a holiday. And yeah, I've got a few weeks off, which is great. So I've been spending time at the beach, been getting out on my bike, which if you look just on wrong side, that side there, you can see my bike there. Just having a really nice time. So look, without further ado, I think we should get into things. We're going to start with, as I said, it's going to be a mix of more serious awards and some of the more fun awards, which I think are the better awards, honestly. Like, who really cares about my Wrestler of the Year? I do. I hope some people think it's got some sort of weight, but, what's more important than, the Nut Trucker or the Wet Fart? So, let's get into the awards. The first award. Oh, and also I should note, I don't have any notes today. For people who've done podcasts with me before, they'll know I have stacks of notes normally. Absolutely stacks of notes. But Vark Tech, there's something weird in the chat there. I don't know what it is. Thanks, Nadias Tavis. I normally have heaps of notes. normally a very prepared person. I've been spending all of my time, I would be creating notes, creating these slides, and working out how to live stream. So I'm just going to be going from the top of my dome. So hopefully I'm not saying too many ums, ers, ahs, the sorts of things I normally edit out of my podcast. And look, if you don't like the sound of me drinking, it's a Christmas thing. We'll be back to the normal. We'll be back to the normal thing next week on the podcast. And look, actually, I'm just going to go back, and before we get into it again, I want to thank everyone for the absolutely fantastic reception the AEW Match Guide has got. I was so blessed when I put together the original list, which you can still find on Wrestling Headlines, that people got behind it. People really got involved in it, and it was the kind of project that I want to do, that brings in all sorts of different points of view, puts it out there, intelligent things, not just ignoring the trolls, focusing on the positive, the things that we love. And the original Match Guide was so well received, and I've just had a fantastic experience creating this podcast as well. To the people who I've promised I'll have on the podcast, I promise I'll have you. Currently, my matches that I've pre-recorded up to stretch to March. So I pre-recorded a lot, and it's all really exciting stuff, but I've got to give it I can't just keep pre-recording it, before you know it, we'll be recording for 2023, and it still won't even be 2022. But look, I just really appreciate all of the positive vibes I've been getting. If you're out there, please rate and review it. I know Spotify recently released a ratings thing. It would be awesome if you could give it 5 stars there. iTunes, whatever you use, give it a 5 stars. Talk about it on social media. It's got a great response on Twitter. I know we had Dax Harwood shouted out, which was mind-blowing stuff. Like, not something you expect to have. Shout outs to Floyd, actually, who sort of brought that to his attention from the All About All Elite podcast on the Social Suplex. But yeah, look, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. I do this because I love to discuss matches. I love to deep dive. I love to focus on the positive, and that's what this podcast is doing. And if you love that too, that just makes me so happy. So thank you to everyone who listens and supports this podcast. But let's get into the awards. Let's get into it. It's Rookie of the Year. So the way I'm going to do this, I've got some nominees in most of the categories. I've got 5 nominees, and then I've got an ultimate winner. So the 5 nominees, we've got Jade Cargill, who blew onto the scene. Her first match was this year in the multi-man tag with Shaq and Red Velvet and Cody. Shout outs to Floyd. I told you Cody's would sort of be tangentially into all these things. He's saying that Cody should win all the good awards. Probably not going to happen, but Cody's involved in some of these things. But yeah, Jade Cargill, and what a year she's had. They have built her to be an absolute attraction in the women's division, and she is a unique looking individual. She carries herself so well. Really a fantastic addition to the promotion, and had a fantastic rookie year. Lee Moriarty. Now, just so people know, there's a category later I'm going to call debutants. Some of these people have wrestled before this year. I'm going to say, these are the unknowns, the people who've come to AEW as unknowns, and they've had their first match this year. Lee Moriarty, in-ring technician, been fantastic. Lots of great work on Dark, and has just started to sort of show up on the main programs as well. All reviews for him have been fantastic. Daniel Garcia, he's going from strength to strength right now. I think he's probably one of the most must-see indie talent, guys on the indies at the moment, just working everywhere, doing matches, which is just how you get good. He is just blowing up, and he's going to give some stiff competition to guys like Jungle Boy, Sammy Guevara, who, they've been put down as the pillars, but he's one of these guys, along with maybe say Griff Garrison, Dante Martin, who are just chomping at the heels of those guys. And as soon as one of them slips, then people like Daniel Garcia are gonna take their spot. Speaking of guys who've made an impact, Hook. This guy's had 2 matches, and he's everyone's favorite wrestler. He's a number 1 seller on Pro Wrestling Tees, but he is a meme. But there is also something really cool about the way he carries himself. You don't just become a meme through nothing. And I think that he in what limited in-ring he's had, he's shown that he really gets it. Like, he is a natural at this. Athletically, he moves really well. He just looks at home in the ring, and boy, this boy has charisma to burn. And, like, honestly, I always think that, like, the moves are the easy part. You can learn those. You can get good at those through repetition, through hard work. But there's some people who have charisma and some people who don't. And that charisma is often very hard to teach and very hard to learn, and Hook just has it. He has that X factor, and he is going to be a force to be reckoned with going forward. And Wheeler Yuta, look, kind of like Lee Moriarty and Daniel Garcia, he's like just getting his name out there through repetition, through hard work, through grinding. On the indies, he's had a really good run with a lot of high-profile shots on there, shown up on New Japan Strong, and of course in AEW as well. But there can only be one winner, and my first Rookie of the Year is Daniel Garcia for the 2021 Rookie of the Year. I don't think there'd be too much argument. This guy's had like some really high-profile matches against guys like John Moxley, CM Punk, and I think he's set himself apart in both of the facets I was talking about. In-ring work, like, he has shown that he is a technician to be. He's already a technician, but he is just going to keep getting better and better. There's something that is menacing about the way that he works in the ring. He looks like he can hurt his opponent, which is a great thing. But he's also got that menace in the way he moves, the way he walks, the way he, even the way he talks on the mic. He's pretty raw on the mic. But he's shown that he can do it. He's got it. And he will be able to develop that skill and become, a really important part of AEW if he stays with AEW. I know he's signed with them at the moment, but fantastic rookie year for Daniel Garcia. I expect big things from him in the future. And as I said, like, those four pillars, Jungle Boy, MJF, Sammy Guevara, and Darby Allin, boy, if they slip, there is a whole host of people who are ready and will be just chomping at the bit to take their place, and Daniel Garcia is one of them. 2021 Rookie of the Year. Congratulations. I'll take a sip for the working man, as Stone Cold used to say. The Nut Trucker of the Year. Now, for those of you who don't follow rugby league, you might not understand the glory of being a nut trucker. What a nut trucker is. They're not necessarily flashy. They don't get all the plaudits, they don't get all the praise, but boy, do they go out and do their job hard. They just take, in rugby league, what they do is they just get the ball, they take it forward, get to the advantage line, take the tackle, get down. Jade was robbed. Yeah, look, Jade was probably my second. Floyd's just said in the chat there, Jade was robbed. I think Jade was my second, but I just think the in-ring work, she's got probably a bigger presence. She's had more high-profile matches, but the in-ring work I've seen from Daniel Garcia is of a higher quality than Jade Cargill. So I'll definitely split the difference on you with that, Floyd. These are all my opinions, of course. If you've got different ones, I'm more than happy to hear what you have to say in the chat. The Nut Trucker. Back to the Nut Trucker. This is someone who's not flashy, who's not fancy, but gets the job done no matter what they're given. And the nominees for it are number 1, Hikaru Shida, of course the women's champion through the pandemic, still the women's champion up until Double or Nothing this year. Just did a lot of good things, and I don't think got the praise and that she deserved, and was uncerebriously left off TV until just a few months ago. She spent 4 or 5 months off TV, and then came back and had this blow-away feud with Serena Deeb that, I don't know, for me is like my women's feud of the year, pretty much. So, undeserved, but hard worker and just got the job done. As I've said I don't think I've said it yet on the podcast because this is pre-recorded stuff, but like, I don't know what would have happened with the division, with the women's division, if Hikaru Shida hadn't been there in 2020. It was not a great division, but far out. I don't know what would have happened. Chris Jericho, nominee number 2. People might say this guy's not exactly like, unfancy, but for me, Chris Jericho this year, he's just got the job done. He's been asked to do some crazy things, and he's just been like, yeah, I'll do that. fall off the blood and the guts cage. Okay, let's do it. Get my face cut up by a pizza cutter and hit with light tubes. Done. I'll do it. Go in a feud with Dan Lambert and fight some. Get physical with MMA fighters. Done. I'll do it. You know, I don't like some of Chris Jericho's politics, some of what he does as a person. I don't know if he's the greatest face in the world, but, you know, for all of that, he has had a year where he has just got the job done and done some crazy things without complaint. And, you know, that's the essence of a nut trucker. So he's a nominee. Excalibur, like, man, is there an AEW show that Excalibur's not on? I watch Road 2 shows, he's on those. I watch Dark, he's on that. I watch Dark Elevation, he's on that. I watch Rampage, he's on that. I watch Dynamite, he's on that. I watch this random women's championship thing they're doing, he's on that. He's in everything that AEW does. This guy is the nut trucker for the commentary team, for the media side of things. He is just constantly taking the nut, taking it forward. You know, he doesn't get the praise of say a JR. He doesn't get to be in the promo shots like maybe Shivani does, where he's interacting with Sting and Brit Baker. But by God, he trucks that nut forward. So he is a worthy nominee. QT Marshall, likewise. You're going to be in a program being champed by Cody. I'll take that forward. I'll take that nut forward. You're going to be in a match with the Big Show where you get dominated. I'll take that nut forward. QT Marshall, another one. And Dustin Rhodes, likewise. This guy is just so solid in the ring, behind the scenes, constantly training other people. What did Cody went to a table for you? Look, Cody is not a nut trucker, Floyd. Cody is anything but a nut trucker. Everything is about Cody for Cody, and that's a good thing. Sometimes you don't want Cody to be a nut trucker. Cody is not a nut trucker. Dustin is, though. Dustin is a nut trucker. Receives a little bit of praise, but he is not a glory hound. He is a nut trucker. But my nut trucker of the year. And I think this is one I will fight anyone about. Hikaru Shida. Man, swig for Hikaru Shida. This is a woman who did so much for AEW that gets... and basically all of the division that she got was... In the division that she was the champion of, all that they got was criticism. Every time she went to the ring... She nailed it. So she wasn't delivering the most epic promos ever, but through the most trying of times, she took the most difficult division that AEW had, and she trucked that nut for that division. Week in, week out, when she was on TV, she gave it her all. She came up with things that would, she got involved in things that would bring... a uniqueness to the product. She pitched this tournament. She went to Japan during COVID. No one else in AEW has done that. She went to Japan in COVID to create this tournament in a warehouse, and made it work. Yes, that's absolutely Floyd. Bang on. She deserves it. That is the essence of nut trucking. Going the extra mile, even when you're not getting the praise for it, because it's your job. It's what you need to do for your team. And that's, by God, that's what Hikaru Shida's done. And by God, she does not get nearly enough praise for it. And, yeah, I just hope to remedy that. I will never stop fighting this battle of the Hikaru Shida deserves your respect. She doesn't deserve the slander she gets, damn it. Respect for Hikaru Shida. She is the nut trucker of the year for 2021. The Golden Wombat. Okay. Moving along, Debutant of the Year. In the past, different awards things I've done Rookie of the Year as the number one person who is new to the company. But I don't think you can do that. Because you can't compare rookies like Jade Cargill, like Daniel Garcia, like Wheeler Yuta, with people like CM Punk or Bryan Danielson. They're just completely different things. So... Here's my nominees for the Debutant of the Year. An experienced, well-known name who's come to AEW and who has shown excellence in the time they've been here. So, number one, Christian. I think the outwork everyone gimmick was corny. I think his debut was a bit weird because they hyped it like it was going to be CM Punk, and then it was Christian. It was like, this guy's great, but he's not what you build it up to be. But he has more than shown his worth in a number of different things. He had a really great match with Kenny Omega in that Rampage match where he won the Impact title. He's been a great companion for Jurassic Express. You can see the work that Jungle Boy is, the development of Jungle Boy as a promo since Christian has been around him is noticeable. And for Jungle Boy, that's a really important part of his game that he needs to develop. And Christian is the one that's standing beside him, showing him the way, by leading by example. So he definitely gets my nominee for that. CM Punk, of course, the most high-profile return in 10 years, I would say. Probably since The Rock. Since Brock Lesnar or The Rock. CM Punk is the most high-profile return in wrestling. Incredible, incredible moment when he debuted. And he has had, really great program. Good, solid program with Darby. Good, solid program with, a few more kind of lower-tier guys. And then got into a incredible feud with Eddie Kingston, which was when it was like, okay, you're over playing with these veterans, training wheels are off, you're back in the thick of it. You're against Eddie Kingston in a promo battle. You better not have slipped in the last 7 years. And then, after Eddie Kingston, after the best face promo on the in the company, who you're up against? Oh, the best heel promo in the company, MJF. So CM Punk has definitely had his work cut out for him in the last couple of months. Andrade. Now, kind of like Christian, debut wasn't great, but I think Andrade has earned his stripes now, particularly his matches against Pac. Incredible. Particularly the second one. Oh, such a good match. And, that match with Cody, say what you like, but that was a absolutely wild brawl. And these men went through a flaming table for you. So he has worked hard to fix the issues he had when he first came to AEW, and I think he has more than done that, and well and truly earns a nomination here. Bryan Danielson, what more can you say? This guy has come in, and not only has he not missed a step, but he is he works like this has been all that he has been dreaming about doing for the last 5 years. He has come in and just torn a hole in the men's division, just been every week in, week out, either ripping it up in the ring, ripping it up on the mic. He is showing this attitude, and both in the ring and on the mic, that, it is something that long-term fans of him say they haven't seen for years and years. I don't know how much stock you can put in that. I always loved him in the WWE, and I don't think, I don't look sadly on those years these are lost years for Daniel Bryan. But, man, since he's come to AEW, he has just been firing on all cylinders. Of course, incredible matches and programs with Kenny Omega, and Hangman Adam Page in the championship tournament. And Eddie Kingston got so many great things from him. Ruby Soho, the final nominee for the Debutante of the Year, also debuted at All Out, and has just had some really good programs. A really hot program with Brit Baker as the champion for the AEW Championship. I was actually calling for them to switch the title to her, just as I thought it would liven up the division a little bit and put notice on Brit Baker, who I don't think has been as strong as people thought she might be as champion. I'm not saying she's been bad by any stretch, but I don't think she's been as excellent as maybe some people thought she might have been. And has now been a featured performer throughout this TBS tournament and a really strong performer throughout it. So, and going into the final, I think she's a really strong shot to win it. And if she does, I think she'll be a great first TBS champion if that's the case. she's solid on the mic. She's good in the ring. She's got charisma, and people love her. So she could be a great person to just hold that title and be sort of the person that they build that title around. The Cody for the title, if you will. Floyd. Floyd's in the chat for the people who are listening on the podcast, so I'm kind of going back and forth with him a little bit. But there can only be one winner. Debutant of the year. Could it be anyone else? Bryan, the American Dragon, Bryan Danielson. As I've said, this guy has been on an absolute tear. As you'll see when I go through my matches of the year at the end, I've thought very highly of a number of the matches that he has had. Coming in, AEW has its plans, right? They're a company that particularly books the top of its division meticulously. This man has come in with such ferocity that he is just throwing spanner after spanner in those plans. I would not be surprised if he becomes champion in 2022. When I think the plan, there's a serviette somewhere that's listed the lineage of the championship that I think goes, something. It's got listed on this serviette like Jericho, Moxley, Omega, Page. I reckon MJF, and then maybe Darby Allin. I reckon Bryan Danielson's going to throw a wrench in that, as probably some other performers have, given what I would like to see happen. But, man, this guy has come on just with ferocity like we haven't seen in a long time. Floyd says CM Punk did Bryan Danielson sell out the United Center? No, he didn't. He sold out Arthur Ashe, which was a bigger stadium. Look, CM has had a great one, but I think the in-ring work, the output from Bryan Danielson has been what sets him apart from CM Punk. They have been on a similar level on the mic, which shows how highly I think of Bryan Danielson, but I haven't seen CM Punk go for an hour with the champion, for half an hour with the champion, in just incredible Iron Man matches. They both had great matches with Eddie Kingston. I was so looking forward to the Jon Moxley Bryan Danielson match, which I think we're probably going to get in the final of that title tournament. So, yeah, he's my debutant of the year. CM Punk, definitely close. The one person I left out of my nominations that people might be questioning is Adam Cole. I just honestly don't think he has hit his straps yet, and I think that's intentional. I think they have chosen to put him on the back burner. Cody sold Arthur Ashe. God, Floyd is deep into the Cody Kool-Aid. Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't listened to his show, God, the All About All Elite podcast this week is going to be nigh unlistenable because of the Cody propaganda you're going to get. Look, Adam Cole, I think that's intentional with Adam Cole. He's mostly been biding his time, doing lots of trios matches with guys like Jungle Boy, John Silver. They haven't hit the nitro with him. They haven't hit the fire with him yet, and I think that's intentional. I think 2022 will be a big year for him. But as I said, the Golden Wombat for Debutant of the Year goes to Bryan Danielson. Moving on to Goober of the Year. Now, if you don't know what the Goober of the Year is, I think my nominees for it will probably give you an idea. The nominees for Goober of the Year: Peter Avalon, 2.0, Brandon Cutler, Rebel, Reba, or is it Rebel, and Sean Spears. Look, it could be Lucky of the Year. It's just someone who you just really want to punch in the face, but does just a really endearing thing about that. Maybe you could. This is one I probably could have nominated Cody for, Floyd, for Goober of the Year. So I won't go too in depth with these. These guys are self-explanatory. Peter Avalon, the little mustache you just want to eat off his face. The time that he was on Dynamite and Caesar Bononi got murked, I think it was by Jon Moxley or someone, and he held him like it was a war movie, and his mate was dying. I think it was he was Forrest Gump and Bubba in Forrest Gump. 2.0 are just so immeasurably punchable. They are just so funny, so hilarious, but just such pricks too. You just love to see him just try and get under the skin of whoever it is, be it like John Moxley, Eddie Kingston, CM Punk. They're just hilarious. Brandon Cutler, man, Brandon Cutler has gone from the most heartwarming, like, try hard on Dark, who you just willing to win one match and you just want him to succeed so much because he tries so hard and he's such a great guy, to like this just such an insufferable dude with this spray and he's wearing this tracksuit and he's got this face mask on and you just cannot wait for a face to just grab him and lariat his head off or tackle him or put him in a submission move or knee him in the face, whatever they can, just to see him get hit. And then when he gets hit, he sells it. Oh man, he sells it like he's a ragdoll. Man, I think you may be able to guess who this is leaning towards, given my thing. Floyd says Cody is a sidekick to no one. Yeah, that's definitely true. Reva/Rebel, she is just like the comedic sidekick to Brit in such a great way. Like, and particularly now they've got Jamie Hayter, who is just this like really serious ass kicker, whereas Rebel is just so lame, so weak. But she's just always there for her girl because she knows that's her meal ticket, and just always in the right spot. She's almost a nut trucker in terms of Goober. She's like the Goober nut trucker of the year because she's just always in the right spot for Brit. Nothing is too embarrassing for her to pull off. Nothing is too demeaning for her to do, and she's just a fantastic part of that act. And then Sean Spears, my fifth, is particularly in his most recent role as the accountability buddy to Wardlow. He's just so hilarious. But look, I think you can probably guess where this is going based on how I've talked about the nominees. It's got to be Brandon Cutler. This is undisputed. Like, Brandon Cutler is so hilarious as the sidekick of the Elite. Just this, such a beatable man. Such a... Oh... I'm losing my words thinking about how to describe. But every time he is on the screen, he is just completely hilarious. Actually, you know what? This is the highlight of the year. When they had that tag match with the Dark Order, and you thought he was the Marshmallow Man, and then he comes out as a horse, and they pull the lid off, and it's him. And he's like, and he's being gagged, and then... Of course, Hangman Page does his reveal, but just the comedic genius of this man. He is such an underrated and such a great addition to the Elite's act as just these completely insufferable pricks. And he's just this try-hard wannabe sidekick for them. Fantastic. And what a character arc as well. So the Golden Wombat for Guru of the Year, it's got to go to Brandon Cutler. And we're moving on to Promo of the Year. Give me a moment. I'm just going to refresh my beverage. This is where Floyd's probably going to tune out on me once he sees who the nominees are. Sorry, Floyd. Cody saying he will not turn did not make Promo of the Year. So... Promo of the Year. It's hard with some of these guys that we've got here to narrow it down to just one promo because there's been some incredible promos. AEW has really great promos. I'm constantly looking at the chat, just waiting to see Floyd flip his nut on this one. Okay, so first nominee. Eddie Kingston and the Redeemer Miro. Miro's not in this picture, but he was just as much a part of this. I wanted to put a Miro promo because I couldn't think of one specifically, and when I talk about my second nominee, it's a similar circumstance where, like, week in, week out, this guy is cutting like 1 or 2 minute promos that completely steal the show. There you go, Floyd. Cody did not have a good promo year. I accept him being left off. Now that is a surprise. That is a big surprise. I'll drink to that. Anyway, Miro, week in, week out, cutting just these incredible promos, and still is, where he just steals the show. He just is so incredible in this character that he's created as the Redeemer. But the highlight, of course, is when Eddie Kingston walked out and cut a promo on him, and they went back and forth, and of course ending in the immortal line of Redeemer, redeem these nuts. And that, mate, of course, became a shirt. Just brilliant. Brilliant. And yeah, as I said, with that, as much a praise for Miro's promos in general across the year as the Redeemer, particularly as the TNT champion. Just incredible work from him. I think we all knew he had that. He was good. I don't think we knew how good he was going to be. And boy, 2021 was a year for Miro. Second nominee, Jon Moxley. Now, the promo I've nominated, I could pick 100 promos by Jon Moxley that he's, maybe not 100, but like 20 promos that he has cut this year that probably deserve to be there. Just, in the lead up to the exploding barbed wire death match, in the lead up to the match with the Young Bucks, there was the sort of, as he was building up to the heel turn, which is what I've picked for this particular promo. This is the promo where he went through Adam Page, Kenny Omega, Christian Cage, and how none of these guys could get the job done against Kenny Omega, and how that was just pissing him off so much because he couldn't have another shot at Kenny Omega because he'd been beaten by him. But no one else could get the job done. And it's where he cut that incredible. He had a couple of incredible lines, even against Hangman Page, which was where I was like, oh, these guys are setting him up to be Hangman Page's first challenger when he wins. So that's what I've done that's the specific promo I've done for Jon Moxley, but it's more like just a general achievement award for those 1 or 2 minute spots where he just takes it and kills it. And it doesn't need a long promo to do that. I think in the WWE, the long promo is what they've sort of made grand, because like guys like Stone Cold and The Rock could open a show and cut these incredible 10-minute, really engaging things. But when you've got a show that's as stacked and frenetic as Dynamite, you can't really afford to have someone spending 10 minutes in the ring every week to cut their promo. But having a guy who can just take a minute, 2 minutes, and just absolutely nail it is an incredible skill to have. So, Jon Moxley and Miro, they get their nominees for kind of like that. Now, the next three are very specific segments. We've got the first one is Eddie Kingston and CM Punk. Man, the live fire that was going on between these two when they met in the ring was incredible. When I talk about like complex characters, this is exactly what I mean. You've got guys who are both favorites of the audience. They're both folk heroes in a way, but they don't like each other. They don't get along. And my little cat has just come up to say hello. Hey, Rupert. Hey, buddy. I'm going to try and drink some of Daddy's beer. No, thank you. There you go. You can go down there. What was I saying? Yeah, incredibly complex. These two guys just don't like each other, but they're still beloved both are beloved by the audience, and they're just hashing out their issues, and they still haven't solved it, even after these promo battles and these matches. But they're just incredibly captivating TV, and lines where when they drop, you're just like, whoa! I cannot believe they've allowed themselves to say that on live TV. But incredibly captivating stuff. I'm down to my second, my Brick Lane Red Ale. Quality stuff. Third promo that is nominated is Adam Page, Cowboy Shit. Now, I think there was a lot of questions, and there still is to a degree, of what Page can do on the mic. Is he that kind of champion on the mic? And I don't think he's going to ever be, like a Jon Moxley, like a Jon Moxley, like a Chris Jericho, even like a Kenny Omega to an extent. He's a guy who is going to have his words his work do the talking more than his words. But when he did this promo about how he fought so hard, even when coming back from like incredible odds that he didn't think he could get back from, how fighting through self-doubt, how leaving to be a father when he was on the best run of his career and putting at risk his position as like the next anointed one, how that was cowboy shit and how that was what he wanted to stand for. I think that answered a lot of questions that people had for him and inspired a lot of people as well. I know for me, I've told a few people when they've done that, when they've done things like, that's cowboy shit, what you're doing right there. And it's a very positive thing. Real positive masculinity on display and real heart and real fire from a guy who I think has captured the imagination of certain people. Not everyone digs him, but a lot of AEW fans really sympathise and really engage with Adam Page, and that was on full display in this promo, which is his best promo to date by far. And then the final one, the final segment that gets promo of the year nomination is MJF and CM Punk, much like the Eddie Kingston and CM Punk thing. This was such a jaw-droppingly engaging display. This was the WWE, let's have 10 minutes in the ring, but this was, you know, like you had the best people they've ever had on the mic, just going back and forth and just emptying the chamber and leaving you thinking, oh man, they can't go any further than what they have, and then doing so and cutting harder and deeper into each other and to who each other are, to who each of them are. You know, like CM Punk's lines about Brit Baker, then getting MJF, turning them into like something about CM Punk and his character and his relationship with his wife. Just like incredibly, this is like right on the line of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. But two just incredibly engaging and charismatic figures, blurring those lines between reality and fiction, or reality and kayfabe. Just really incredibly engaging stuff. I think for 20 minutes. This is by far the longest promo segment AEW have ever done. They won't do a lot of them like this, but it was just a tour de force for what these two guys can have. But there can only be one winner. And for me, it is Eddie Kingston and CM Punk. This is really close. MJF and CM Punk is really close to winning this one. But for me, I connect a lot with Eddie Kingston. The fight, I just love, as you can see from my shirt, if you're watching on YouTube, I'll just quickly flick. I'm wearing an Eddie Kingston shirt. This is a guy who's just captivated me. And as I said, these golden wombats, they're just about my opinion. And this was so interesting because it had two men who are both really flawed. And they're beloved for their flaws, and they wear their flaws on their sleeve. They don't try and cover them up or hide them. But it was each of them going directly at the other one's flaw and really nailing them for it and really talking about like why that is not a good thing. And for me, that is just such compelling conflict for wrestling. Like Eddie Kingston, he is an emotional guy who wears his heart on his sleeve, but that has meant that he has rubbed people the wrong way in the past. And CM Punk is a guy who is a perfectionist, who is prickly, and who doesn't necessarily go out of his ways to ingratiate himself to people. And you know, he's beloved because he's excellent, and he's beloved because of what he stands for. But both of these men are both very flawed in some ways, and they had that on full display in these segments. And created just like such an emotive, such a combustible environment, such a charged environment of aggression. Like these two were getting in each other's face, and it led to like an incredible match as well, which is, you know, ultimately what a great promo is about, right? Like a great promo is about building up a great match. So That's what this did in such an incredible way. So it wins my promo of the year. Boy, I am losing my voice. Now we move to the wet fart of the year. Floyd, I'm sorry. This is the one that Cody was mostly nominated for. Oh, look, I'm taking no prisoners on this one. The wet fart of the year, it's self-explanatory. It is, the thing was meant to be something. It was meant to be just like a little fart. Or it was meant to be something better. You know, it wasn't meant to be anything, but it turned out to be an absolute disaster. And there was a few of them this year in AEW. And we could laugh about them because, you know, like, this promotion isn't perfect. The slander out there is sometimes blown way out of proportion. But it's worth it to acknowledge it and think about things in a humorous way. Okay, so like my first nominee, the face of the revolution, Cody Rhodes, is thinking, I'm going to have this great... There was a lot in this that was an homage to the very first Money in the Bank match. And in the very first Money in the Bank match, there's this great Chris Benoit spot where he gets taken out by Edge and his arm is just like dangling from a thread, and he goes to the back and then he comes out again and the crowd's just so behind him because he's this underdog who's just fighting from underneath and is injured, but he's still going out to fight because he wants to win. And even though, like, the whole point is that you have to reach up, you have to climb a ladder and reach up, but his arm's not working, so he can't even properly do that. But he's still going to, because he's a Wolverine, he's so fierce, he's going to fight through that, and the crowd love it. Cody tried to do that, and the crowd booed him. Man, it was so obvious what was happening as well. Like, in theory, this was a cool idea. Like, you know, this beloved face, he gets taken out, viciously taken out by this new guy, Ethan Page, but, you know, he gets taken to the back and he fights through the pain, and he pushes aside his advisors who are like, no, you've got to live to fight another day. And he's like, no, I'm going to go and grab that brass ring. But because it's Cody Rhodes, people just booed him because, you know, he's already, like, he's an EVP of the promotion. He doesn't need the brass ring. He's one of the people that holds the brass ring for people to grab. Like, this is not a man who, and considering the people he was against, like, he's above all these people that he's against because he is a star, and none of the other ones in this ladder match are like a star on Cody's level. So this is the first wet fart of the year. The second one, and look, this is one that is near and dear to my heart. And it's actually a match we're going to cover on the AEW Match Guide in a few weeks. The explosion that wasn't. This exploding barbed wire death match, right? Like, this is set up to be the most dangerous, death-defying thing that anyone has done in AEW, in American wrestling, for years, for decades. And two of the biggest name wrestlers in the world go out and have this match over the AEW Championship. They're setting up to be like the most prestigious thing in the world that these two champions will go to war for in the most crazy of circumstances. And they have an incredible match, which, as I said, we'll get into. And then at the end of it, Jon Moxley, who's this beloved crowd hero, who, you know, took the company through the pandemic, through its toughest years, is taken out by this dastardly group of heels and left with no friends, no one to save him. And out comes his old rival, Eddie Kingston, who he just had, 3 months ago, he had this incredibly heated and personal feud with, and Eddie comes out to save him and covers him up, and then the explosion goes off, and the explosion is pathetic. Like, it's a couple of little sparklers, and there's nothing going off even close to them, and they sell it like they've just been hit by a giant bomb. I don't know what was meant to happen in this, but it was a wet fart. This is a wet fart. Oh my gosh. And yeah, I just felt so sorry for these two people, for Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley in there. And if you read the chapter about it in Jon Moxley's book, he is just furious with what's happening, and rightly so. Like, him and Kenny Omega deserve better than this. And I'm one of the people that hopes they do another one of these matches, but do it properly. I don't know if it's going to be Omega and Moxley. Omega and Moxley might be the two craziest people. Maybe Darby Allin, who would probably want to get to do it, but I don't know who else they're going to be able to get into there, into one of those rings. But this was a wet fart. Nomination 3, the Suzuki incident. Like, come on, AEW. Like, sometimes this was such an own goal, such a stupid own goal. Minoru Suzuki's got this incredible entrance that everyone loves to sing along to, and you cut it. I mean, like, come on. It wasn't like this, it got sold online like it was like this international diplomatic incident, and, the New Japan was going to pull its diplomats from the AEW nation or something like that. It was nothing like that, but it's just like such a ridiculous own goal. Like, if you're worried about the time, somehow edit the song down and just get to Kaze ni Nare earlier. Excuse me. Having these beers is like wearing on me, guys. I don't really drink this much. But for you guys, for Christmas, I'm going to. I haven't had a live reaction from Floyd yet for seeing these. The wet fight of the year, nomination 4, the blood and guts ending. This is so like the exploding barbed wire death match, in that, this incredibly high stakes match that they'd been building up to, this moment to like create a star, sell an incredible story beat, but it's completely undercut by the execution. They had like a number of camera angles they could have used, which would have been incredible, but instead they use one that like reveals this crash mat and reveals that these pieces of like metal or wood are actually just pieces of cardboard. Like, I don't mind them having a crash mat, as I said in the blood and guts thing. Like, this is something that they've done all the time. Like, Mick Foley is the only guy who's taken like an unprotected roll off the Hell in a Cell cage. Every other one of those has been padded, or the big things with Jeff Hardy jumping off things, he just lands on a crash pad, and they use camera angles to make it look like he lands on the person, and then they shuffle along to make him look like he's on top of the wrestler. Cody should definitely not win. It was at Revolution, and the explosion was so much fun. Trust me, Floyd, Cody's not going to win. Cody's a nominee. He's not going to win this. This one's pretty obvious. The fifth nominee, the weigh-in. This was just a disaster. The weigh-in for the Go-Go match. It was already a disaster from Cody's like ridiculous promo about like America and racism, and I don't want to get into all that. As an Aussie, like, I'm going to keep my fingers out of that. I think if you go back in my Twitter timeline, I've got some choice words for it, but this weigh-in, like, even removed from that, like, the weird reaction Cody was starting to get, they're, like, doing this weigh-in, and for some reason, the Big Show is meant to be doing the scales, and he's really fixated on getting it right. Like, this is pro wrestling. You don't actually have to weigh them properly. You just fiddle with the scales, make it look, and say something. Say what they are. And you can even see, like, Cody telling him what the weight should be so he can just announce it. But he's like, fixated on the scales. And then, like, somehow there's a wind blowing and it messes with the flags they've got. And then somehow halfway through, like, fireworks start going off nearby. So the crowd's completely distracted. The performers are distracted. This was a wet fart, and hilariously so. But there can only be only one winner, and far out. Like, oh man, like, I'm wearing an Eddie Kingston shirt. John Moxley is my favorite ever wrestler. Kenny Omega is one of my favorite wrestlers. I love this match. We're going to cover it on the wrestling on the podcast in a few weeks' time. I love this match, but far out, the ending. Oh my god, like, it let everything down. The gravitas of this match was so let down, and the reason that this wins over, say, the blood and guts, over, say, like, the Cody stuff I was talking about, or the Suzuki incident, is like, this is the main event of a pay-per-view. The ending for the main event of a pay-per-view for your championship. And this happens. Like, it's no understatement to say that this was, like, when we're talking wet farts, right? Like, we're talking where you think it's going to be a nice dry fight, you're just going to get away with it, and then a little bit of wet. This isn't just like a little bit of wet. This is like a full-blown pants full of diarrhea moment for AEW. Like, in terms of how much this is like letting down what should have happened. Like all the character beats I talked about. This incredible match that I love, I still love, even despite of the ending. Oh, I mean, they're just lucky that they had Eddie Kingston and John Moxley and Don Callis and Kenny Omega to try and make something out of this. Because if it had been any lesser wrestlers, man, this literally could have been career-limiting stuff. But it does win one thing. It wins the Golden Wombat Wet Fart of the year for a pants full of diarrhea for this explosion that never happened at a Revolution 2021. Moving along, thank goodness. And from here on, we're going to be focusing on, this is where the awards start to get a bit more serious. We're looking at the Tag Team of the Year, the Wrestlers of the Year, and then, of course, the Match of the Year. Tag Team of the Year, we've got Nominee won the Young Bucks. Started the year as champions, of course, had a number of great matches against, Eddie and Mox, and then the Lucha Bros, and have sort of been doing things in the Trios division since, in multi-man matches, against the Dark Order and those, and Jurassic Express, those sorts of guys. Nominee 2, the Lucha Bros, of course, became champions. Both of them were in interesting combinations with Eddie Kingston, and there was Eddie Kingston and Pentagon versus the Bucks, and Ray Phoenix and Puck versus the Bucks at different points. But ultimately winning the championship in a steel cage match against the Bucks at All Out, and then going on to have feuds with FTR. Looks like they're heading to a feud with Jurassic Express, different matches. I think I had a championship match with the Acclaimed as well. So lots of solid work throughout the year for them. FTR, these are the three most featured teams really in AEW. FTR, of course, they were part of the Blood and Guts match early on. They had a series against Proud and Powerful, who are my fourth nominees, and then went into a series against the Lucha Bros, and that's pretty much been their year. They became AAA champions this year as well. It's just been very, very solid. Their series against Proud and Powerful was a bit snake bit at different points. Floyd's cheering for FTR. This is my opinion, Floyd, and you can, on your show, you can have FTR if you want. Tips of the wise, probably not going to be FTR, but they've had a really good year. They have had a really good year, and they're getting better and better as well. I think they're finding their place really well in the division. They're finding how their style fits with the AEW house style, and it's not something that they immediately sort of gelled with. And I think you can see that really in the trios match they recently had with MJF against Sting, Darby Allin, and CM Punk. That was just such a good match. So solid, such great work. And, I think they are a really great featured player in the tag division. Even when they're not champions. And I expect them to be champions at some point again down the line. Fourth nominee, Proud and Powerful. I think the first four are really, they're the four most heavily featured teams in AEW. Of course, you've got those guys were part of the Blood and Guts match. And then the series against FTR. They've been a bit quiet since then. They were part of the American Top Team series, of course. I think these guys this year have really set themselves. They made Sting look like God. They did. That's a good point, Floyd. They absolutely FTR. That is, he's talking about. They made Sting look like a god. Absolutely. As I said, in the podcast I did with Floyd about FTR versus the Young Bucks, these guys are just absolute wrestling nerds. And they would have just absolutely loved being in the ring with Sting and making him look incredible. And they are wrestling nerds as well, so they love some Sting. They love themselves some Sting. They would have been little stingers back in the day when they were growing up, so they would have loved that. Back onto Proud and Powerful, I think the thing these guys have done this year that has really helped me see them in a new light is they have gotten really strong on the promos, particularly Santana. Man, that guy can cut a promo and a half. And I suspect, and a lot of people do, that they are kind of on the back burner a little bit at the moment, but leading up to a big program with the Lucha Bros. The fifth nominee, I was kind of torn on this one because I really love Jurassic Express, but then I was thinking back, they haven't actually done it. There's been a lot of stuff they've done that's not been tags. They, of course, were part of the build-up to All Out, where there were people who were thinking that maybe they should face the Young Bucks instead of the Lucha Bros. But apart from that and the multi-man work they've done, they've been doing a lot more solo stuff with Jungle Boy. So I've gone with 2.0 as my next nominees. You know, as I said, they were nominated for Goober of the Year. They have just been highly entertaining. But you need people like 2.0 in the division. You know, they fill a very similar role to like the Acclaimed. You know, these are teams that are not at the moment, they're not on the level of like the top of the division. They're like the mid card of the division. But every time they go out there, they're really solid. Every time they get a microphone, they're entertaining. And I love the little relationship they've got with Daniel Garcia, where they're like calling him their son. Daniel Garcia is just accepting it. You know, they had another great program, you know, where they were involved with Darby and Sting and CM Punk. And they made Sting look like a god as well. And as I said, the main reason for them is just highly entertaining. Like their promos with Eddie Kingston, hilarious. And just very giving in the ring. They're willing to just play the fool so well, and you just need that in, as I said, like these guys aren't the top of the division. They don't need to look like the top of the division. They don't need to look like superstars. They just need to be entertaining and be, you know, great, very punchable. These two guys are very, very punchable guys. But there can only be one winner, and look, I think it's undisputed. The Young Bucks have had an insane year for in terms of matches in ring and character work. Like, these guys have been on another level. Like, I think the only other tag team run that I know of, and I'm not a long-term wrestling fan, so the reason I don't call these guys the greatest tag team ever is because I have never watched a lot of 80s wrestling, and tag team wrestling back then was very strong. Same with 90s. Like, I've not watched a lot of 90s wrestling, and I know that there was strong tag team stuff then. I've watched a lot of featured matches, you know, like the matches you know about, but I haven't watched the week in, week out. And these guys, like, when you look at them, you look at like their high-profile stuff. Match against Chris Jericho and MJF. Yeah, it was maybe like a bit mid, but then you look at, you know, their other pay-per-view matches against Eddie and John Moxley. Incredible match of the year contender. Against the Lucha Bros, match of the year contender, and filling in the blanks in between that, like matches against Jurassic Express, where like you wanted Jurassic Express so badly to get the steel cage match because you wanted them to beat the Young Bucks because these guys were just so insufferable. And against, as I said, against like Penta and Eddie and Puck and Phoenix, and you know, they've then gone on to do stuff with the Dark Order and Hangman Page. Just absolutely top tier work. The only other year that I can compare it to is FTR / the Revival in 2016. When they had those matches against American Alpha and DIY. But like, the thing that I've just loved about the Young Bucks is their character stuff. Like, these are, I think, like, for years, the people who've been saying these guys don't have psychology and they're just spot monkeys have been, like, well and truly out of date with their takes. But this year, it is just so evident that these guys are absolute character wrestlers as well. They are so... Floyd has just said in the chat, I think you've had too much to drink, FTR. Of course you're going to say that, Floyd. Look, Floyd, when you wake up in the morning and when you've also got off the drinks, you'll realise that I am right. Like, the character stuff these guys have done, the promos they cut, like just the Nick Jackson doing that "Bacock" sound. Like, these guys have just been on fire in every aspect of their game. And if I was going to pick, I haven't done it in this year, but if I was going to pick a Golden Wombat for like the at the act of the year, these guys would take it over my male wrestler of the year and female wrestler of the year. These guys have just had the most incredible year for a tag team that I can remember, except for maybe that 2016 run. Just hitting on all cylinders. And as you'll see in my match of the year list, like, I just love the work these guys did. So they are my 2021 tag team of the year, Golden Wombat tag team of the year. Female wrestler of the year. This is one that is fairly hotly contested, really, for a division that people don't think is done very well. And look, me being one of them at different points. When I look back, there's been a lot of good stuff this year. My nominee, one, Hikaru Shida. Of course, my Nut Trucker of the year. She started the year as champion, created this incredible tournament, which was just an awesome idea. We had this Japanese bracket, this American bracket, culminating in a match with Ryu Mizunami that's very underrated. Everything about Hikaru Shida is underrated. Also had a really good program with Brit Baker in the lead up to Double or Nothing. Went quiet, which is, this is the downer on Hikaru Shida's year, but then came back and has just had this incredible feud against Serena Deeb, who's one of my other nominees for female wrestler of the year. Nominee 2, Brit Baker, of course, DMD. She's the champion. Had one of the great women's matches in AEW, like a match that is a moment in time for the women's division against Thunder Rosa, who's another one of my nominees. Became champion, has been really strong as a character, even if she hasn't been as strong in the ring as I would like her to be. Floyd says he has no idea who to pick. I think this was very close as well. Very, very strong as a character, but not so strong in the ring. Strong programs with like Ruby Soho, strong program with Tay Conti, but like nothing in the ring that really blew me away, except for that match with Thunder Rosa, of course. As champion though, like nothing in the ring that's blown me away. Thunder Rosa, as I said, the unsanctioned match, like what more do you need to say about that? She is just a really beloved part of AEW, the AEW women's division. She's been a part of this TBS tournament as well, like a big part of this TBS tournament. But like apart from the unsanctioned match in the TBS tournament, hasn't done a whole lot, unfortunately. I think she's being set up for a big 2022, and I think all of us know that like Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa, that's a program that's got money written on it for the division, and that's going to be a really high-profile thing. But she hasn't had the most. She's like Hikaru Shida. She's had a lot of quiet periods this year. Serena Deeb. 2 really great matches with Riho Serena Deeb. And then, of course, got injured, unfortunately, but then has come back and has just been on a tear with Hikaru Shida. Like getting a side out of Shida that we hadn't seen before. And is just setting herself up, even though she's not a champion, like is setting herself up as a champ maker in the division. Like this is a person you're going to send women to when you want to get them ready for a championship match, or you want to get them heated up, or even if you just want them to have some shine put on them and some finesse put into their in-ring work. Like I think she could be really good with, say, Tay Conti, who's still quite raw as an in-ring talent, or even to go like maybe a bit further down, Layla Hirsch, Red Velvet, like these performers that AEW's got that have a lot of potential and have a bit of audience connection, but are still finding their way a little bit. I think Serena Deeb is someone who can take them to school, literally as the professor of pro wrestling. And then my 5th nominee, Ruby Soho, as I said, for my debutante of the year nominee for her, like came in it all out and really got a connection quickly with the audience, and has been a really strong presence in the division through her program with Britt Baker, through the TBS tournament, which I think the TBS tournament has been one of the best things to happen to the women's division, alongside definitely even more so than the initial tournament that happened at the start of the year. But that sort of showed what could happen if you do put the effort into making a tournament, and they've really shown that with the TBS with how they've been able to book that and how strongly Ruby Soho has performed throughout that. So she's my 5th nominee. Now my winner, as Floyd said, this is a really tight one. My winner, I think for me, as I said, I like the Hikaru Shida slander is out of control. Has always been out of control. No, I think most people respect her, but I'll never stop beating the drum for her because I love her as a performer. But she was quiet for most of the year, and like you can't say that for the champion. Brit Baker and was strong but lacking in some points. So that leads me to my winner, Serena Deeb, because everything she has done has just been so excellent. Even when she had an injury, so she was off TV for a while. But the program with Riho, which I believe is my next episode, with my mate Gareth from ELO Wrestling, and Pro Wrestling Musings. Like, the series with Riho is so good. And then this program with Hikaru Shida, I think it's the best program and long-term feud that we've had in the AEW women's division, particularly in the way that is Deeb has been able to bring out a fire from Hikaru Shida that wasn't there before, and that was probably something that Hikaru Shida needed when she was champion but didn't necessarily have. People loved her and respected her, and the audience got into this feud because they did like Hikaru Shida and they wanted well for her because they do know what she did. But Deeb has been the perfect foil for Shida in this aspect. And there's been different times where she's been sitting on the sidelines and you've just been waiting for her to get involved in other people's programs. So I'm looking forward to what they do with Deeb and for just the outright excellence. Even if it was on a limited scale, just the outright excellence in the programs with Riho and the program with Shida, she gets my Wrestler of the Year. And my Female Wrestler of the Year. Let me know in the chat what you think of that and who you would have picked, because, man, I don't know. It's a real close one. It's a real close one, and there's no clear number one. All of them have, pros and all have cons. Which moves me to Male Wrestler of the Year, another super close one. Sorry, Floyd, Cody's not nominated. So, my nominees, Kenny Omega, the champion for most of the year, had a number of incredible matches and, like the Young Bucks, had some really great character work as well. Started the year in this really hot program with John Moxley. Actually started the year with a match against Phoenix, which I will be talking about in the match guide in a few weeks' time, probably 5 or 6 weeks' time actually. But really strong start to the year, and that was when the Good Brothers showed up and they sort of reformed the Bullet Club kind of. Kenta showed up, just busting down this forbidden door. Floyd saying, I probably would have went with DMD, but Serena is a great pick. Yeah, Floyd, it was really close. I definitely thought of DMD because she is the one that, has been the forefront of the division and the crowd love her, but in ring, I don't think she's got it done quite to the top level, but Deeb's been excellent. Anyway, on to the Male Wrestler of the Year, back to the Male Wrestler. Omega, yeah, as I said, has just been excellent in ring. And had these really hot programs, the one against Moxley, and then leading into Double or Nothing. This program with Park and Orange Cassidy became something that you really wanted to see Orange Cassidy win, because of how Omega was treating him. And the only weakness to his reign, I think, really, is that you kind of knew who was going to be where it was heading. You ultimately knew that Hangman was going to become the champion, which is, I'm still not sure how I feel about that in terms of is it actually a detraction that, they laid out a really good story and because it was such a strong story, you could see where it was headed. Not everything in wrestling needs to be a swerve or needs to be unpredictable. Sometimes it's good for the predictable but sensible and the path that makes sense to win. But yeah, look, great matches with, as I said, that barbed wire death match is fantastic, and I hope to do it justice when we talk about it on the match guide in a couple of weeks' time. The triple threat at Double or Nothing was really good. He had a great match with Jungle Boy as well. In the meantime, this incredible 5-man with Hangman Page. This match against Christian for the Impact title, which was good. And all off, I don't count these because it's AEW I'm talking about, but he's like having great matches in Impact as well. And AAA. Then has this just like blow-away match with Bryan Danielson. 30-minute Iron Man that goes to Broadway. Incredible stuff. And doing it all with Vertigo as well. Like, just, this guy is one of the great in-ring talents that we've ever seen. But at the same time, like the Young Bucks, just being a perfectly insufferable prick that you want to see lose. And you just love getting behind the babyface that's against them. And that was shown in, like how the crowd got behind Orange Cassidy, how the crowd got behind Jungle Boy, how they, even got behind Christian a little bit, how they got behind Danielson, and how they massively got behind Adam Page, who is one of my nominees that I'll go into later. Nominee 2, Eddie Kingston. This is a guy who is like upset the apple cart. I said before, like AEW is a company that meticulously books itself, and this is a guy who wasn't meant to be part of AEW. He was someone who came in for one shot, but through strength of performance, willed himself to be on the roster, and has gone from strength to strength since. As I said, had a really great match against the Young Bucks with Jon Moxley. Had, some really strong stuff against Miro, the Redeemer. Had incredible program with CM Punk, and a great match with Bryan Danielson. And every time this man is on the screen, he is captivating in such an incredible way. And particularly had just a really incredible late surge in terms of being his case for being the champion, the male wrestler of the year. Bryan Danielson, man, talk about late surges. This guy came from nowhere, but week in, week out has just got it done in such an incredible way. So much fire, so much passion, obvious passion, but has been able to be a bit of a chameleon as well. When he first came in, he's a guy that fans are getting behind against Kenny Omega, and then against Hangman Adam Page, he starts throughout the tournament. He starts to become a bit more brutal. Number one championship tournament, he becomes a bit more brutal. Has a very physical match against Eddie Kingston. He's a bit of a prick to him, really, to start with. And then against Hangman Adam Page, like almost outright, he shows his true colours. He's still coming out of that face tunnel because he thinks he's a face. But he is, really talking down to Hangman Page, really putting him down and putting him in what he feels his place is, and feeling, showing outright that he thinks he is a far better and far superior wrestler. And then, of course, having these incredible matches against, the ones that immediately come to mind are Kenny Omega, of course, Dustin Rhodes, one of my Nut Trucker nominees, Eddie Kingston, had a great match against Miro, and then, of course, he went against all the Dark Order as well, dragged great matches out of them. Not that, they needed dragging out of, but really, really fantastic series against them. And then, of course, the 60-minute Broadway with Hangman Page, which I loved, and I will be talking about later on in my Match of the Year stuff. And that moves on to my fourth guy, my fourth nominee, Hangman Adam Page, who makes an underrated. He had an underrated start to the year. The program against Matt Hardy, it was nothing incredible, but it was exactly what you want someone doing who you want to be a focal point of your company, but isn't necessarily in the top spot right now. It's busy work, for example. And then, of course, had the match against Brian Cage at Double or Nothing, which is fantastic. A lot of stuff with Team Taz. I had a good match with Ricky Starks until he dropped Ricky Starks on his head. And then, this really hot program once the crowds opened up again, a really hot program against the Elite and Kenny Omega, which led to that 5-man tag match, and then returned to win that ladder match to become the number one contender, and won it in another great match against Kenny Omega. And then I don't think he had the strongest side of, excuse me, he was the weaker part of the weaker half of the Danielson feud, but when they actually got in the ring and had their match, like, more than held his own, and also elevated that match, which was one of my favourite matches of the year, that 60-minute Broadway they had. And then my nominee 5, Miro, who, as I said when I was talking about promo of the year, just managed to explode and become someone who people are saying is the greatest TNT champion ever, because of just the strength of his work as the champion, as the Redeemer. And of course, you can't forget, this year also had the Arcade Anarchy match, which was a very strong and very well-received tag match. So he also has a strong case for Male Wrestler of the Year. And this was also a really tight one, but for me, I kind of went, for me, this was split between the head and the heart. My head says Omega, but wrestling is ultimately about feeling, it's about emotion. And no one this year dragged emotion out of me more than Eddie Kingston. He came home like a house on fire. As strong as Bryan Danielson came home, Eddie Kingston came home just as strong, and he also had a strong first half of the year. Like, this is a man who, the early catchphrase for AEW was going from undesirable to undeniable. And no one has done that more than Eddie Kingston. No one exemplifies that more than Eddie Kingston. No one is the heart of AEW more than Eddie freaking Kingston. Like, this is a man who has engendered such a following and has become such a beloved figure, and has been involved in some of the most heated and most compelling feuds in the division, in the company. I'm talking the feud with the that feud with the Young Bucks, which he was involved in multiple tag team matches against the Young Bucks, and then the feud against Miro, where people so desperately wanted him to win the TNT Championship, and he had that great promo battle with Miro, and then the match against. And then the match against he had a great match against Kobashi. Not Kobashi, God, that's who I'm sure he'd love to have a match against Kobashi. That match against Kojima. Wait, was he against Kojima or was he against, who was he against it All Out? I can't remember. God, this doesn't talk. This doesn't talk. It was against Miro. Of course, it was against Miro. The great match against Miro, and then the match against Danielson, which was just an absolute barn burner. That match against Danielson, I think, is like one of the matches that I would show to people who don't know how great wrestling can be, and I want to show them what wrestling can be. And then that just incredibly heated program with CM Punk, where they just laid themselves bare so brutally, and the rage felt so intense, the anger, the passion felt so intense, and felt so real. No one is more authentic than Eddie Kingston. No one is more beloved than Eddie Kingston, and man, I so badly want him to be champion. I got my Moxley run in 2020, that Moxley championship run that he should have had in WWE, but he never got. That was the last of my scotch. I might have to pour myself some more. But in 2022, 2023, I so badly want Eddie Kingston to be the AEW champion. Or the TNT champion. Man, I'd settle for the TNT champion, but he should be a singles champion at some point because people love him so badly and get behind him so much. He could even just be a champion for one night and it would be fine, because this is a man who could have been forgotten. And I'm stealing lines from my mate Mizfan. I've recorded a podcast about the match between him and Mox, the I Quit match. I'm stealing lines from him at this point. But this is a man who people thought, long-term fans of him thought that he would be lost. That this would be a talent that one day people would look back on and would wonder whatever happened. How did this guy not become a bigger star? But he has become a bigger star. And he has become undeniable, I think, as a singles wrestler. And he has done that in 2021. So for me, he is my male wrestler of the year. For 2021, the Golden Wombat. He is a bit of a wombat as well. If you know anything about wombats, you'll know why Eddie Kingston is the Golden Wombat for 2021. And that brings me to my countdown for the matches of the year. Now, I'm going to do this a little bit differently. Instead of having 5 nominees, I've gone with the honourable mentions and a top 10, which I'll count down. I'll talk about a little bit about each match. Based on who I've been nominating, you'll probably get an idea. But in the chat, because it'll be a little while before I get to it, maybe in the chat, tell me what you think my number 1 match is going to be. What do you think is going to be my top match of the year for the match of the year for 2021 for the Golden Wombats? What do you think it's going to be? And what's your favourite match of the year? So let's go to it. Firstly, my honourable mentions. I've got Miro versus Eddie Kingston. As I said, I just love this program. The crowd was so on Eddie's side, and Eddie did such a cool job of creating this flaw and identifying this flaw and this chink in Miro's armor and trying to exploit it, but then ultimately not being able to get there. Heartbreaking stuff that he had to give up. Honorable mention 2, Hikaru Shida versus Serena Deeb 2. Man, I so wanted this to be in my top 10. This was so close to being in my top 10. As I said, this is probably non-gimmick matches. I think this is the best singles match this is the best match that the AEW Women's Division has produced, aside from gimmick matches. Just so much fire in this second match from Shida, and the crowd was into it too because of how they did the first match with Shida missing out on her 50th win, so they immediately created stakes, and then Shida was fighting for her life in it, and Serena Deeb was taking such great pleasure in being able to punish Shida and being the foil for this person who had been great in the division, and she took such great pleasure in being able to spoil that, and then of course Shida got the win, which was a great moment. Hangman vs Danielson is Floyd's. My match of the year is Bucks vs Bros from All Out Cage Match will be yours. Okay, we'll see if you are correct. Hangman vs Danielson is mine. That's certainly one that's going to be on my list as well, Floyd. So we'll see what happens. Honorable mention number 3, Puck vs Andrade. I think it was their second match. In terms of work rate, just incredible stuff. These guys were just pulling out such great moves. And their chemistry together was so good. They have strength, they have agility. This is from just an aesthetic point of view, watching a match. And they had a bit of grit and fire in this match as well. This is what I want. These guys didn't have much of a story or a program. If anything, the program was detracting from the actual match itself. But I really liked the stuff these guys put together in their series. And then honorable mention number 4, I really wanted to put this in my top 10 as well. I wanted to love this match more than I actually did. Hangman Page versus Kenny Omega at Full Gear. As I said, I love this story. I don't think there's many AEW fans that don't love this story. But for me, the actual match itself, I don't know, I've rewatched it. It's emotive, but it's not on that excellent level for me. So it didn't make it into the top 10. But this was one of the ones I found hard to leave out because I love the program. I love the story so much. But that brings... Imp finally gets his ass out of bed and to the top end of the Wombats. Yeah, you've tuned in for the last little bit, Imp. You'll have to catch the podcast to find out who won the other ones, who won the Goober of the year and who won the Nut Trucker of the year. But good to have you along for this. So the top 10. Number 10, Jon Moxley versus Lance Archer, the IWGP US Championship Texas Deathmatch. I feel like this is a forgotten match. I feel like I'm the only person who is talking about this in the realm of match of the year. But this was... Meltzer rated this 4.5. This was an incredible match. And a fitting end to Jon Moxley as the IWGP US Champion. No one Even Cody, no one has made Lance Archer look like more of a monster than Jon Moxley did in this match. It was so violent. So much, like, it was bloody and violent. Exactly what you want a Texas death match to be. Essentially a last man standing match. And a shocking ending. I did not think that Lance Archer was going to win. But he finally did. Paying off a spot that they have elevated over a number of matches, this spot of doing a paradigm shift to the outside. At their first matchup at the Tokyo Dome at Wrestle Kingdom, that's how Moxley won, doing a paradigm shift to the outside through the tables. That's how he won their Texas Death match there. Their second meeting in AEW, Lance Archer was able to kick out after that. Moxley rolled him back in. And he was able to kick out after the paradigm shift through the tables. And then this time, what happens is Jon Moxley sets up a barbed wire board on the outside to paradigm shift Lance Archer through. But Lance Archer slams him through. I can't exactly remember how he went through the barbed wire board, but he got stuck in it. And he couldn't answer the call. So Lance Archer won the IWGP US Championship, winning that championship. I reckon the biggest win of Archer's career. I don't know what's happened to Archer since he won it. He hasn't really been on AEW TV. Of course, he did lose it to Hiroshi Tanahashi at a New Japan match later on. But man, this as an individual match was incredible. And it came as Moxley was putting together quite a catalogue of matches as well that, nearly got him nominated for Male Wrestler of the Year. But this was, for me, a fantastic match, and is one that is not getting enough talk about amongst the Match of the Year contenders. So violent, so bloody, so gritty, and had a crowd like on the edge of its seat, and a very shocking ending as well. So number 9, the Young Bucks versus SCU. Man, this was a match that AEW did dirty a little bit. They didn't do the build-up justice, and they didn't do the final beat, which I've used as the image here of Kazarian and Christopher Daniels. Didn't do that justice either. They kind of cut away from it and then showed them embracing on replay. Archer got injured during the tournament. I forgot about that, Floyd. I forgot that Archer got injured in the tournament. So that's what happened to Archer. But man, such a great match against Mox. Anyway, on to this one. AEW did this a bit dirty, but the performers in this match, this was a love letter. This was such a beautiful match. The fire, the final, this was the peak of the Young Bucks just being completely insufferable. These are like long-term running buddies that they've got. Long-term rivals and friends, people they've had around for Christmas, and they took pleasure in killing off this union that has meant so much to the people that they're standing opposite. And there was blood. There was this incredible moment of like the blood on Matt's shoe, and Matt just being so disgusted that he got blood on his shoe. Even though this blood is coming from someone that he supposedly loves. But the match, the emotion from Frankie and Chris Daniels, the fire in their comebacks, the last stand of Frankie Kazarian when Chris Daniels had been taken out and Frankie Kazarian was fighting for everything he could to save this tag team that he loved so much, and this union that he had with this man that he loved and had ridden with, was something else. The fire from Frankie Kazarian was just incredible in this. This was just a love letter to each other from each of these teams. So much love put in, and such an incredible result. It's a bit sad this didn't happen in front of a full crowd, because, man, I would have loved to have heard how the crowd would have got behind Frankie Kazarian as he was having his final fight, and, of course, the emotional hug at the end. Just a beautiful endpoint. So, yeah, this is... I would have loved to have put this higher, but I just couldn't, because there was such a strong set of matches. But this was just a great match by the Young Bucks that is sort of flown under the radar a little bit. I haven't seen it getting much match of the year chatter either. Number 8, I said I would talk about it more, and I loved it. Kenny Omega versus Jon Moxley, exploding barbed wire death match, AEW World Championship. Oh, I've written World Championship on the slide. Whoopsies. Yes, the ending sucks. I'll get that out of the way. But, this is one of the great death matches you'll ever see. Like, we have not seen wrestlers on the level of Jon Moxley and Kenny Omega do a match like this. There are specialists like Onita. There are veterans, hardcore veterans like Foley and Terry Funk who've done these matches. There are well-known people who've done these matches, but no wrestlers on the level of like the top. You didn't see Flair and Steamboat do these kinds of matches in the 80s. You didn't see, say, Austin and Rock do this match in the 90s or early noughties. You didn't see Cena do this match. You didn't see... Yeah, these guys are fighting for the top championship, and they are doing a exploding barbed wire death match. And for that alone, like the physicality in this match and the danger that they set up in this match was so well done. And the grit and fire from each performer was incredible. Jon Moxley in this match put on a character performance that is just so perfect. So well done. What's Imp said here? Yes, a work of art if it weren't for the production at the end. Yep. Yeah. Look, the only thing that lets this match down is the ending. But everything up until that is just so well done and so perfect. For me, this is like, if you're just talking bell to bell, this is like a 5-star match this is the best exploding barbed wire death match they've had. Of course, the ending lets that all down. It's the wet fart of the year. As I said, it won the Golden Wombat's wet fart, and let me tell you, Wombats do very big farts. But the actual match itself was incredible. As I said, in a couple of weeks, I'll be talking about it on the podcast, so I don't want to steal too much from that, but the setup for this match, the stakes they created, the way that they elevated the tension early on and then paid off the explosions at different points and like got more violent, more and more violent. It was just fantastic. Brilliant match, and this is my number 8. I love to keep ranting about it, but it's got to keep going. Number 7, Brit Baker versus Thunder Rosa, lights out, unsanctioned match. This is honestly a little bit of a match that I wouldn't say soured on. I'm not as hot on it as I was when I first saw it. And I think part of it is this match, as good as it is, and it's very good, it's a match that is going to be as much a moment in the history of the AEW women's division as it is like a good match. So the example I'd give is like Andre versus Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 3 is not a very good match, but Andre being slammed by Hogan and being beaten by Hogan is like one of the immortal moments in all of wrestling. And it's as much a thing that has happened as it is, and as much a legacy moment as it is like a match that is good. And I think this match as well is that. It is a really good match. But what it is like, what it shows is the potential of this women's division to be a main event attraction, to be something that is as gritty, as compelling, as violent, as authentic, as raw, as anything that the men can do. And Brit Baker and Thunder Rosa are the two women to do that. Like, as soon as these two lock eyes on one another in a singles capacity, the crowd is going to explode because this match has happened. The build up to this match was really good, but the actual execution of this match was just so much these two going out there and saying, we're going to make a statement, not just for ourselves, but for this division, for women's wrestling. And by God, they made it. And that's why, that as much as anything else, that is why it's on this list. I think I previously would have had it higher because it is a really good match. But like, I think as much as anything, it is a statement for what it could be in AEW, what women's wrestling could be in AEW and should be in AEW. definitely deserves to be on this list, but I've got it ranked at number 7. I know some people who would have it higher. Anyway, next match. Excuse me. Gosh, I'm getting phlegmy. COVID negative, though. I did a test a couple of days ago. Eddie Kingston versus Bryan Danielson. As I said, my wrestler of the year was Eddie Kingston. My debutant of the year was Daniel Bryan. Implication says, Sam, as much as I loved it at the time, as momentous as it was, I've got Baker, Rosa in the exact same position on my own top 10. There you go. Well, I'm not alone in thinking that. But number 6, Eddie Kingston versus Bryan Danielson. Man, as I've said, I think elsewhere when I was talking about this match, if I want to show people what wrestling can be, what like fire and heart and passion in wrestling could be, this is what I'd show them. Like, these two just went out and did violence on one another. They were battling for the potential to become champion ultimately, because that was for number 1. But these guys wanted to prove themselves against one another. Danielson against this man who has become the heart of AEW, and Kingston against like this indie legend who, you know, he has never been able to live up to, but he thinks he can beat. And he tried with everything he could to match Bryan Danielson, tried with every molecule of his body to inflict damage. And you can see that in Danielson's like just chopped up chest, just red raw chest at the end of this match, but ultimately couldn't get it done. And of course, like, you had this great ending where Eddie is giving him the finger and not wanting to tap out, but having to tap out and having to give up. And then ultimately, get ready to say the words Bryan and Danielson a lot in these final 6 matches. Yes. Ultimately, this then went into the Punk feud, where like straight after this match, Eddie Kingston, he doesn't want to shake Bryan Danielson's hand because he's disgusted with himself, and he comes out and he vents his fury on the first person he sees, CM Punk, who he's already like got a chip on his shoulder against. This was just fantastic pro wrestling, and is just a masterclass in what pro wrestling can be. The heart, the fire, and the violent, the physicality as well. And that brings me to our next match, Eddie Kingston vs. CM Punk, which is what that last one went to. Like, the way they kicked this off was just so fantastic, where Punk is getting interviewed and Eddie has just been beaten, and he's like, why are you smirking at me? Why are you smirking at me? He's someone, he already doesn't like Punk, and he sees Punk after when he's already in a vulnerable situation, and he immediately like fires up at him. And then these two had that incredible promo battle, which was my promo of the year, and then came out, and when these two fought each other, man, it was just so fiery. As I said, like, when I watched this match, particularly when I rewatched it, I was like, this is the moment where CM Punk has to become CM Punk again. Like, he's no longer a nostalgia act. He's no longer like this veteran who can just say like, oh, I'm just feeling my way, because he's in a fight with Eddie Kingston. On the mic, he was in a fight for survival against Eddie Kingston, and then in this match, he's in a fight for survival against Eddie Kingston, and a man who he doesn't like. These two don't like each other. They don't like what they see when they look at the man across the ring, and they still haven't resolved it. I hope they never resolve it. I hope these two are like blood rivals, even though they're both beloved. I hope they are like fight on sight rivals from the minute that from like the rest of their careers in AEW, or maybe they could do something where they win each other's respect, and it would be incredibly heartwarming as well, because as I said, they're both like rivals. But Eddie Kingston got CM Punk booed. Like, that's how good Eddie Kingston was in this, and how beloved he is, and how good CM Punk is as well. Like, he was able to flip the crowd into booing him because of how far he was going, and how much he wanted to disrespect Eddie Kingston, like even pulling out a John Cena-esque spot, as we can see in this beautiful little picture that I've put up for this on the slideshow. Oh, hello, Rupert. Rupert's back, everyone. My cat Rupert is back and trying to get in my microphone. So this is my fifth match on the list. Eddie Kingston versus CM Punk. Moving into the top 4. Number 4, Adam Page versus Bryan Danielson, the AEW Championship match on Dynamite. The 60-minute Iron Man. Man, I was on the review with this with Imp afterwards for the Wrestling Headlines review, and the thing that I kept going back to with this was it was going, like a lot of people, we're smart. AEW has a smart fan base. Most people picked at about like the half an hour mark or whatever that this was going to go the distance, but I still bit on all the near falls because of how well they sold it. Like the in-ring chemistry and the physicality of this was so fantastic, and the character work from both men, like the fire from Page wanting to show his worth as a champion, and the cockiness and the disrespect from Bryan Danielson, wanting, because he thinks he's so superior to this man, to the man who is champion. Both of them just incredible. And, being able to hold a crowd for 60 minutes is something. There's lots of 60-minute matches where the middle of it's like a good 5 minutes to open, 50 minutes of not very much, and then 5 minutes of really exciting reversals and counters. This was not that. This match had all these different chapters within it. I thought like Hangman Page had been fully taken out at one point. I thought he was like concussed and they were going to like call the match off or something along those lines, with how they were playing with it in the middle part. And then you had Hangman Page, taking advantage and punishing Bryan. And then you had at the end just like such sweet counter wrestling from them where, it was clear they had read each other's book and knew each other's moveset, so they were doing everything to avoid it, but also dealing with deep exhaustion at the end as well, because they'd gone nearly 60 minutes. And then, of course, like the final moments where Hangman Page is crawling towards but can't get the cover in time. Just brilliant. Brilliant. And such a great way for Hangman to set up himself as like a working champion. As I said, like character-wise, he's a guy who is going to let his wrestling do the talking more often than not. He can talk, but he's a pretty softly spoken bloke. So he's going to have to get it done in the ring, and this was such a great way for him to set himself up as a working champion, and as a champion who will fight forever for this thing. Ib says in the chat, my God, held the crowd for 60 and had them on their feet for the final 10 to 15. Incredible stuff. Exactly. Perfect, Imp. Exactly why it's number 4 on my list. Number 3, Kenny Omega versus Bryan Danielson. The other Iron Man match. Very similar to the match with Hangman. This was another one where people had picked that it was probably going to go the distance, but it didn't matter because the incredible in-ring chemistry that these two had was fantastic. I rewatched this because I wanted to compare it to the 60-minute one to know which one I liked more, and I loved how Kenny Omega just so remorselessly went after Bryan Danielson's head. This was Bryan's first match in AEW, and Omega just went so stiffly with his V-triggers at Danielson's head, and Danielson sold it so well. He sold the grogginess. It looked like he was concussed, and Omega was just brutally working him over with it. And then, of course, you've got the final beat where, like, even once the bell rings, these two don't want to stop fighting. They keep fighting beyond the half hour, and people start climbing in the ring to separate them, but they're still fighting and still going for each other. So I just love this, and it was the perfect introduction for Bryan Danielson for what he was going to be in AEW, and it was the high point for me for Kenny Omega's title reign in terms of like the in-ring singles work was the high point for me for all of that, which leaves my top 2. And interesting, I said the high point for singles because number 2, this was hard. splitting this, and you're right, Floyd, number one is against the Lucha Bros, but for a long time, this was my number one match of the year, the Young Bucks versus Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston, AEW Tag Team Championship match. I was split on whether this should be my number one. In the moment, I think I like this more than the Lucha Bros match, because I love Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston so damn much. I wanted them to win this so badly, and this was the return of live crowds who were so on Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston's side, so heavily behind them. And this was such a well-structured match as well, because you had two singles wrestlers, like obviously two singles wrestlers who know each other, but are ultimately singles wrestlers against a team. And it took a team to beat each of the singles wrestlers. And what you had was, you would have these stanzas where the singles wrestlers would manage to get on top because they'd be able to get one-on-one. And of course, one-on-one, neither Nick Jackson or Matt Jackson can match Jon Moxley or Eddie Kingston because they're a team and these guys are singles wrestlers. But at some point, they would get the numbers advantage because they're a team, so they know how to work it to get the numbers advantage more than Eddie and Moxley do. And that's what this ultimately was. This was a team beating two individuals. And you so wanted Moxley and Kingston to win. You so wanted it. And like there was moments where I was like, they're just going to do it because this is a return to crowds. They're just going to do this feel good moment. But they ended up not doing it. But and the Young Bucks were in such fine form, just the most insufferable pricks. As I said, I've got this image here of them doing the Shield powerbomb thing. They did the Macho Man thing. They did the Hulk Hogan thing. Just doing anything and everything to get booed. You had this fantastic moment where Machine Gun came down the entrance ramp and Frankie Kazarian taked him out as the Elite Hunter, and then you just see Eddie Kingston launch himself off the ramp because he's just noticed Doc Gallows coming in to try and blindside them, like this incredible moment of chaos. And the Young Bucks they know how to climax a match so well, and ultimately they just had to took out Kingston. And then they just had to hit Moxley with, I think it was like 4 BTE triggers because, that was the only way to put this man down. This man who was formerly the AEW champion, it took so much to get him down. I wanted to do this as my number one, but on rewatch, this became my number two because my number one, as Floyd guessed, the Young Bucks versus the Lucha Bros Steel Cage AEW Tag Team Championship match. I think as much because this was the match with the happy ending. Maybe if Eddie and Mox had a happy ending, it would have been that match, but this match was the one that did it. Everything about this match was just such a beautiful presentation of the Lucha Bros, from the incredible introductions they got with they had the Mexican rappers, they had the headdresses on, they got to the ring, and then in the match you had just the most brutal displays where like Pentagon had his mask ripped up and his face was bleeding, and Phoenix was bouncing everywhere just trying to do what he could, and ultimately going off the top to take out the Bucks and get the win. You had everything thrown into this match that they could do. You had all of the incredible spots that these teams do, plus you had the added thing of the extra brutality of the cage. You had the thumbtack shoe brought in by the Young Bucks, which is just like, it's such a unique weapon that they've got, but is so perfect for them as as people who just do who can spam the super kick. What do? You put thumbtacks on your shoe. So for me, this was a number one match, just a euphoric win for the Lucha Bros. And I'm not a guy who likes the Young Bucks style spotty wrestling, but this had so much grit and fire from the Lucha Bros in a way that I've never seen the Lucha Bros do before. I don't particularly love the other Lucha Bros matches. They're all good. They're all really good. Like the ladder match they've had was bordering on great for a ladder match, but this match just... I think I have the image of Pentagon's mask ripped up with the blood coming down his face, just like burnt into my brain for how evocative it is, how incredible it is. For me, this was my match of the year. And of course, you're welcome to your opinion. Absolutely. This is all my opinion, but the Golden Wombat for match of the year goes to the Young Bucks versus the Lucha Bros Steel Cage AEW Tag Team Championship match from All Out. And that brings to an end the Golden Wombats. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I've had a couple of beers, a couple of whiskeys, talked about a lot of wrestling. Thanks to Floyd Nimp for joining me in the chat. Really appreciate you guys. It's been a great year of wrestling. Really fun year of wrestling, and I think 2022 is going to be just as good. And yeah, look, as I said, it's been a really fun ride with the podcast. It's been, deep diving every week into these matches is fantastic. It's so fun. And the only problem I've got is that I just want to keep on doing it. And I want to keep on recording these episodes, and I've got to give it a wait before I record my next one. So, yeah. But look, I really appreciate everyone who's been loving the podcast, who's been sharing it, who's been reaching out to me, who's been rating it. All of that is just so appreciated. Just looking at my schedule, next week we'll have Riho versus Serena Deeb featuring Gareth. That was an underrated match as well. Came close to... I think if I had a top 20, that would probably have made it. But, a great match. Riho versus Serena Deeb with Gareth. That's next Friday. Then the week after that, I've got Moxley versus Omega, the exploding barbed wire death match, coming up. I've got the street fight between Best Friends and Proud and Powerful. I've got matches from that women's tournament that was in Japan. I've got Dustin versus Cody Rhodes. That I'm going to do that. The number 2 match from the wrestling headline, from the definitive match guide. I'm going to do that with the Doc Chad Matthews, one of the goats for wrestling commentators. Oh, I've got so many great things coming up, guys. And I just really appreciate all the people who are along for the ride with me. Floyd says, I was live for 5 of the 10. It was awesome listening to you give your feelings on them. Floyd, you're a lucky man. I'm really lucky to know you as well, Floyd. You're a great guy as well, and so are you, Imp. And Imp agrees with me for his the match of the year that was the Bucks versus the Lucha Bros too. But look, as I said, thank you so much to everyone who's been involved in this podcast. It's been such a fun ride, and I cannot wait for the awesome things we're going to do in 2022 as well. Until then, I will see you next year. I'll see you next year. And you can hit me up on Twitter, Sir_Samuel. Please rate and review. Please check out all the other great shows we have on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. Of course, we've got One Nation Radio, which often covers AEW stuff, New Japan, keeping it strong style. It's Wrestle Kingdom season. They'll be reviewing that. All About All Elite. They've got their own end-of-year review shows where Floyd will no doubt be giving everything to Cody Rhodes. And, check out my boy Imp as well on Wrestling Headlines. He does weekly reviews live after AEW, and they often feature guys like myself, Rich and James from One Nation Radio, so support him too. Look, really appreciate it. Happy New Year, guys. Thank you very much for being with me today. And, love you and respect you all so much. And thank you for being part of it. Bye.